Do you guys have like a favorite like call to the mission that we've seen in the series? Because I think of like in Fallout, we had like the book, the guy coming to the door, and he's like, "I am the storm." Like that was really cool.
I think Rogue Nation's the record store, that was my favorite.
I think it's becoming harder and harder for IMF agents to find Tom Cruise because like in each one he gets more like secretive, and it's like it's almost like a mission to find him. And it's like even in this one, he's in the dark and he's talking to the guy, and the guy's like, who?
Hello? Are you there?
Who's here?
It's my first day.
He's like, what does the hippopotamus say agents. To the elephant? I'm like, I don't.
I'm a hungry hippo. No, that's not the code word, man.
Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. My name is Shahbaz, and joining alongside me are my other IMF agents, Daniel and Anthony. Daniel, how are you doing today?
Shahbaz, if you want to shake hands with the devil, that's fine by me.
Okay.
I just want to make sure you do it in hell.
Wow. I mean, that is aggressive, to be honest with you. Starting off like that is a bit intense for me.
Where else would you shake the devil's hand, right? Like,
right.
Well, majority of the time you're spending
not on Earth.
Not on Earth. You do it in hell, right? But it's a good line.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. I want to hope so. One of the greatest movie lines ever.
Absolutely.
I believe. I stand by that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's it hits you right in the gut. It's one of those kind of lines.
And it's weird. It has nothing to do with Mission Impossible. It was weirdly in the Barney movie, which is very strange. Very strange.
Yeah, very weird. Yeah. The one coming out with Daniel Kaluuya, right? Yeah, that's the one.
Yes, that's the one.
And of course, the devil himself, Anthony. Anthony, how are you?
Your mission, should you choose to accept it. You notice, like, Tom Cruise never says, yeah, I choose to accept it. Like, he'll just look in kind of stoic, but he never says, yes, I'm going to do it. You notice that? Like, it's like, don't give me the option if you know I'm going to do it. Like, that's
true.
Have
we heard him say, I accept?
No.
We've only heard him say mission accomplished, which was a fantastic ending in Ghost Protocol.
It was earned.
That was super earned. Yeah, but he never
says, do you guys have like a favorite like call to the mission that we've seen in the series? Because I think of like in Fallout, we had like the book, the guy coming to the door, and he's like, I am the storm. Like that was really cool.
I think Rogue Nation's the record store, that was my favorite.
Yeah. That was a really cool.
And in the first one with the plane.
I think it's becoming harder and harder for IMF agents to find Tom Cruise because like in each one he gets more like secretive, and it's like it's almost like a mission to find him. And it's like even in this one, he's in the dark and he's talking to the guy, and the guy's like, who?
Hello? Are you there?
Who's here?
It's my first day.
He's like, what does the hippopotamus say agents. To the elephant? I'm like, I don't.
I'm a hungry hippo. No, that's not the code word, man.
No, it just gets harder and harder.
It's so funny.
The best is too, where he's just like on the mountain. He's like, it wouldn't be a vacation if I told you, and he throws his glasses out.
The Oakley shades.
Yeah.
That's a great one. I love that one. I also love as silly as it is in Mission Impossible 3, where he goes like to the convenience store to get ice, and he gets a disposable camera. Yeah. And he's just like looking at the disposable camera with like Billy Crudup there. It's just it's so silly, but it works. No matter how silly it is in the Mission Impossible franchise, Tom Cruise always makes it look cool.
Yeah, the silliness kind of lends itself to some sort of seriousness that's involved in these situations. And they do a really good job of kind of making you believe it. Like even in Ghost Protocol, when he goes to the payphone and it's about to self-destruct and it doesn't, and he kind of walks back up to it, gives it a quick knock, and then it does. It's like, yeah, these jokes are kind of earned. They're not always taking place, and they're kind of, breaking that fourth wall, and it's always earned for us.
I always thought that was like Russian tech, like it doesn't work right away. You got to like hit it. So because he was he not in Russia? He was in Russia in that one.
He was in Russia.
Yeah.
And then like when he banged it, I'm like, oh, that's just a nod at like Russian tech is not the greatest.
Russian telephones.
I never bought Russian
not
tech.
Be working.
I've just never bought.
You've never bought a Russian car before? You never bought like the old Simpsons Ichabod?
I never bought
Kremlin?
Runs on like 3 hectares of kerosene. Like, no, of course not. No, I don't even know Russia made tech. Like, what are they like? It's all spy stuff, right? Okay, before we get canceled, they did make Tetris.
They did make us Tetris.
No one from Russia listens to us, so I don't think we're worried about that.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't think we have do we have like a
we're not big
a
in
movie
Russia
podcast?
yet.
We're not big. Hey, Russia, if you
If
want to
you're
buy our
listening.
show, no, please don't. Please
No,
don't.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to
no.
get shipped there for any reason.
No, and it's funny because we're recording this also on America's Independence Day. It's like, yeah, let's partner with Russia. No, we're not.
No,
we're not doing
no,
that
No,
today,
no,
guys.
No. The film that we're talking about again today is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 or Part Uno, if you're in Spain for some reason. Listen to this. And this film does star Tom Cruise, Hayley Atwell, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson, Vanessa Kirby, Esai Morales, Pom Klementieff, Mariela Garriga, Shea Whigham, and of course, returning back from the first film, Henry Czerny. This is awesome. This is such a what an amazing group of people, and we've luckily had some of these folks on our show already, like Rebecca Ferguson and Pom Klementieff. So this is awesome. And you know what? There may be someone from this movie that might be on our show. Fingers crossed, it's Tom Cruise, but I don't. He might be a little busy. Might be hanging out outside of a
Cruise, come on down, come on down.
You never know. The guy's always making movies. He's always in theaters, so I don't blame him. He's getting everyone's butts back into the seats of a cinema, so I can't be upset at him. And of course, want to give a huge shout out to our friends over at Paramount Pictures for inviting us to come watch this movie, and also for providing us some interviews. Maybe that'll come out soon, so stay tuned for that. The best place to stay tuned, though, is our social media. Twitter and everything seems to be going to hellfire, but while it's still up, go ahead, go to our show details, give that a read because it has our Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, everything on there. We're at The Movie Podcast. And of course, the place that'll never shut down is our Discord. You can join that, have a great conversation there. Let us know what questions you have about the Mission Impossible franchise that we may be able to ask in the upcoming interviews. Or if there's ever questions you want us to ask following people that we'll have on our show, that is the best place to do it. We're having some great conversations in there. And as Daniel always says, stick it right here, baby girl.
That's that you spoiled, first of all, Tom Cruise's big line that he has in the movie.
Stick it right here, baby girl.
When he's saving the world, that's what he says. No, but also imagine if the plot of Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 2 was Tom having to take down the Discord servers, and now this episode is out of date.
Damn it!
Now
what if our Discord server too? Of
just
all
ours. Just I pictured the Discord servers like in Rogue Nation, under the underwater with the turbine and everything like that, and Tom just has to go through that again, and just our specific card he pulls out, like the movie podcast,
shuts down,
unplugged.
That is, that sounds.
I feel like that's just a waste of mission, just because we have so many other routes that we could go. It's like, okay, you disconnected from Discord, but we can always start.
We could create another Discord,
right? Yeah, it's like, it's
why
not
are we
that big of a
spending time
deal.
doing this?
No,
why do we have Russian satellite codes in our Discord channel? By the way, that's the bigger issue.
Russia,
yeah. I love that we still do this. We've
called upon them too much, but that's the thing, though, right? We do this, but generations underneath us. Not that there's many generations
underneath. Wow,
younger generations.
I feel really
when you
old.
ask them, like, oh, mimic a phone, it's like this, right? Like,
I still do this.
Okay,
yeah.
I like this.
I'm an old head.
And then you could do this right after, right? Like you
I'm like, yo,
Cowabunga.
Cowabunga, dudes. We're going so off topic, but hey, that's the movie podcast for you. We're having fun.
Cowabunga, Ninja Turtles, Paramount movies we're talking about today, baby.
There you go.
Right?
And of course, if you want to check out this Paramount picture, see how I did that? It will be exclusively in theaters July 12th. It's been a long time coming. We're so excited. We've been following the birth and inception of this movie since day one. We were huge fans of Fallout. That was one of our first reviews that Daniel and I did for This Time With, before it was the movie podcast.
That's true. Our first YouTube review.
Absolutely. And then we were like, hey, we need one more white guy, because one white, one brown isn't going to do it. It's not going to get us through many doors. So we need
people to take it seriously on here.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't just do it with like a milkshake. You got to do it the whole way through. So that's why, Anthony, you joined us. My goodness. Spoiler alert.
I'm okay. I'm okay with it, man. I'm okay.
Yeah.
You can't pick your heroes. Is that what they say?
I honestly don't know, because that has anything to do with this, but yeah.
I didn't expect that. I did not expect that quote to come through.
Also,
but
a line from the movie when Tom is jumping out of the plane, he's like, "Can't pick your heroes." They're like, wait, Tom, wait, what?
Benji, where's my parachute?
What's going on? Oh, man. I don't want to take up too much time. I want to get right to this movie because we have a lot to talk about with this film. There's a lot of great things about this movie. We had the chance to see it with a packed crowd. So there's a lot of the reactions that we want to take away from that too. But to give us our first reaction, though, I'm going to kick it over to Daniel.
So I'm just loosening up here. Shahbaz, you said it. This film has been one that we have been thinking about, I think, every single day since it was announced in 2018 or the end of 2019. I remember Tom Cruise tweeting out, we are making Mission Impossible 7 and 8, and they're going to be coming out. We're shooting them back to back, and they're going to be coming out in like 2020 and 2021. And boy, were we wrong. But what we did get in between that time was a little film called Top Gun Maverick, which not only saved cinema, it was a phenomenal movie, and a movie that I think about almost every single day. I'm not going to lie to you. I listen to the soundtrack often, and I always debate, if I don't know what to watch, I'll put on Top Gun Maverick because it's that good of a movie. When we saw that movie, we did see the trailer for Mission Impossible. We got our first look at this movie, and we're like, okay, this is going to be something special, but it's also going to be something darker. And Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning doesn't go bigger than Fallout. It goes deeper. It's the start of a new trilogy. And it really didn't dawn on me until we kept watching it that I'm like, wow, this is a very different film that I think a lot of people are anticipating. There's a lot more darker themes. There's a level of maturity, and I'm not saying that the Mission Impossible films weren't mature before. They were. They get very dark at times. But there's some really dark stuff in this film, and I loved it. And I was just so transported by it. And it is a movie that I just sat there in awe the entire time. You have a runtime of almost 3 hours, and it just flies by. I don't think that, I think of a movie like The Batman, which is another film 3 hours long. So I'm like, that I think of the length. But even in The Batman, it was deliberately slow paced. Where this film, you are just going set piece to set piece to set piece, and it looks incredible. And we've seen a lot of big movies this year, but Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is it is just an unforgettable cinematic experience. It's beautiful to look at. It is just effortlessly cool. And I think you look at the direction of Christopher McQuarrie, he has just mastered his directing abilities at this point. We've seen some incredible work from him over the years. Rogue Nation was a step in a different direction for Mission Impossible, as every new mission has been since its inception. But I think Tom and Chris have really cracked the code of what this series can be. And Fallout gave us one of the greatest action films of all time. And I think this is following suit with that. And I'm still in a place where I'm like, do I like it more than Fallout? I think Fallout is a more fun film. It has maybe more impressive action set pieces in it. But what action set pieces, which this is not lacking at all, don't get me wrong, what this makes up for it is telling a more nuanced and darker and mature story. And I really like that. And I think of Pom Klementieff in this film, who is phenomenal. I think of Hayley Atwell in this movie, who's finally given a role like that she just absolutely crushes, and she always crushes it whenever she's in, but she's given so much to do in this movie, and I love it. She is so damn good. And I think of Vanessa Kirby, who is another one who we got introduced to in Fallout, who gets so much more to do this time around. It's incredible. And of course, Tom Cruise, who just never ceases to deliver on anything that he does, be it action set piece or emotion. I think this is the most emotional Mission Impossible film, and I think that's something that we spoke about on previous episodes on the movie podcast, where we were talking about how it feels like Ethan is caring more about the people around him. And I know that's always been his crutch, and we spoke about that in Rogue Nation, where it's like he can't distinguish between saving one person and everybody. And you get to see that on display here. And I really love the villain of this movie. It's not your traditional villain at all. Like, you are fighting an AI, essentially. And I think it's also a very timely film because, if this came out, let's say 5 years ago, we'd be like, yeah, that's a little far-fetched. It's not. It really isn't far-fetched at all. And I think when you have such a strong cast and you have someone like Esai Morales, who is just so intimidating, he has such an incredible presence. I'm overwhelmed by Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. I'm so excited to watch it again because I think the first time that we watched it, I wasn't really able to process it properly because I was just so overwhelmed. And it really is the start of a new trilogy. When you look at Mission Impossible 1, 2, 3, that's kind of their own set of films. They all have different styles and different directors. 4, 5, and 6 share a lot more of the same DNA, even though we have Brad Bird and we have Christopher McQuarrie shaking things up in there. But this feels a lot more in line with Brian De Palma's original film, but just elevated to the highest degree. I loved Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. I also fought with it, and I don't mean literally fought with it in the stands while we were sitting there. You guys had to hold me down. It's a movie that I think is going to challenge people because it is a lot more dense than I think that we've gotten before in this series. There is a lot to this film, and that's why I'm really excited to watch it again with the three of us later this week so we can unpack it a little bit more, because I think it is a film that we will be coming back to. And I think, and I'm hoping, it's going to be a movie that I only love more the more I watch it.
Yeah, I think you said a lot of great things there that really encompass what this film is, and Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise just continue to raise the bar with cinematic excellence. There's so much about this movie that when it finished, I was like, okay, I love it. I love this movie, but there's things that I'm kind of battling with it, like that it didn't. And I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. Where Fallout for me was a home run, and over again throughout the whole entire film. When I finished Dead Reckoning, it just like you mentioned, Daniel, it challenged me to continue thinking about the film. It is very much a part one movie, and we've been getting a lot of part ones, this year and last year and so on and so forth. And that doesn't mean that it's a negative. It doesn't mean like, okay, it's incomplete, but it's like when we get part two, that's really going to tell us the story of Dead Reckoning as a whole. So there's a lot of great things about this movie. There's a lot of stuff that I love, and I definitely want to get to a bigger conversation for it. But I want to kick it over to Anthony for his first reaction for Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1.
I'm actually conflicted with Dead Reckoning because even though I enjoyed the movie, I don't think it exceeds its expectations of what we expected for this film. Fallout felt so different than all the other Mission movies and everything that we've gotten in the franchise up until that point. And once we knew everyone was returning for Mission Impossible 7, my expectations was they were going to capture a greater sense of that Fallout atmosphere that we got. And even like Dead Reckoning is more of like a hybrid of previous Mission Impossibles that we've had. It's a hybrid between Rogue Nation, Ghost Protocol, and Fallout, and leaning, I would say, more towards Rogue and Ghost, just because of the story and where it leads to. Where Fallout stands out with the plot twists. There's a lot of plot twists in Fallout. With Dead Reckoning, I don't know what really stood out to me. Yes, it has the big action, and overall, it's a great film, but I don't know yet where the story lies for me. And it's definitely something that I would have to rewatch again because it just didn't make the impact that I was looking for. And that's a good thing because I am going to go back and watch Dead Reckoning. So there is a lot that I enjoyed. I think that for a franchise 7 movies in, it's hard to keep up with creating new villains, creating new characters, creating new, just even locales. And you notice, like, I've been watching all the Mission Impossible movies, and I noticed there's a lot of rinse and repeat, and not in a bad way, but there's like a lot of the locations that are there that are very similar to previous Mission Impossibles. And I feel like this movie does a great job of doing callbacks to those time periods because you have the Brian De Palma vibe with the shot angles that just really intense, in your face, low angle.
Yeah, those Dutch angles, right?
Those Dutch angles. And then you have like the Brad Bird vibe where it's just they're back in Rome, or they're back in Italy. We'll see. They're back in Italy.
Even the comedy is like Brad Bird.
Yes. There's also like an action sequence where Tom flies through a train And then that's very similar to when Tom flew through the building in a parachute in Rogue Nation. There are little things, but it's a good callback. It's not like, hey, they're just repeating what they're doing. Even like Hayley Atwell's character, she's a thief, which is very similar to Thandie Newton's character in Mission Impossible 2, who's also a thief. So I like that they do those callbacks, but I was just looking for a little bit more of the story where I know we talk about it being dark, but I found Fallout more darker. There was a tone and the seriousness to it that even though there are dark moments, I felt like the villain, which I'm not very fond of, and you mentioned before it's an AI villain. I'm not very fond of that villain route, even though it's fitting for what we're experiencing now in the world and how AI is becoming a big thing. And it's surprising because this movie was being shot and was made right before COVID, and AI wasn't even part of the vocabulary of a lot of people. So it's funny that it came out right at the right time. Like if COVID didn't happen, this might have been something that a lot of people kind of looked over or kind of maybe didn't believe in the villain.
Yeah, it would have felt like, that's very far fetched. Like that's not
nowadays it isn't.
Now we use AI every day for so many things, and it's so much more part of the zeitgeist that I think you see it and you're like, like this is a very timely release of this. Same way where we kind of movie starts and we have reference to a submarine, and where everyone in the theater, you kind of felt like that. Oh, like we're in a submarine right now, which is timely with everything that obviously happened with the Titanic submarine and all that, right?
It's strange how the world kind of works its magic, especially with movies and releases. So again, like it's not that I didn't like it. It's a difficult story to follow as well because it's so dense, and I found myself really focusing on the action sequences more than the story. And that was a problem because I felt like Fallout gave you a balance of the two, where there is, these huge action sequences, and then it leads to a great story and back to action sequence, where the story became so convoluted at times where I'm like, I need the subtitles to read this to understand who is what and what is happening. Even though like it is plain and simple, I like to dive into the nitty gritty of, well, why is Kittridge back? What has he been doing? And what was he in charge of?
Right.
And where is Angela Bassett's character? And all these things. So I need to watch it again. I think if I watch it again, I'll appreciate it more. But this is my first reaction. This is how I felt coming out of it.
I feel like a lot of people are going into this Mission Impossible film and maybe have been rewatching all of them like we have, and are, riding high off of Top Gun Maverick. I'm really curious to see what like the Top Gun Maverick crowd, or like the people who started getting into, maybe even Tom Cruise action films post Maverick over the last year, are going to feel leaving Dead Reckoning. That's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I think a lot of what you mentioned there, Anthony, a lot of that stands true for me as well, because there's so much about Fallout that I feel like it felt like the pinnacle of the Mission Impossible franchise. It balanced everything so well, whereas Dead Reckoning Part 1 has a bit of a greatest hits kind of a vibe to it, where it takes everything that worked in the previous movies and tries to kind of make it its own. And I commend it for pulling off a lot of those things really, really well. Where the movie kind of suffers for me is in the story department, because there's so much kind of happening there that are paired with all these amazing action sequences that I'm so in love with, that had me like, I just didn't know where it would go when the scenes were starting. Like when the action moments were occurring, I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who's going to live. I don't know who's going to die. And I think they were so much better prepared when filming these moments, because they looked really tense. The camera angles got very, very claustrophobic. Everything looked real, and like even if it was on a CG green screen, for example, for some moments, because clearly the movie was shot during COVID, you'd be like, yeah, sure, this looks real. And the action sequences that actually were shot, like the one that we keep seeing of the bike going over the mountain, amazing. There's all those things that are so great, but where the movie kind of has me scratching my head sometimes is the story, because it starts to kind of get in that area of, we're introduced to a character from Ethan's past before he joined the IMF, and it's kind of like we've never really heard about this character, or we never heard about this love interest, and then we're kind of just being thrown this, and it's like, okay, here it is, accept it, and it's going to tie into the very end.
Yeah, or part two.
Or part two, we never know where it's going to kind of come. And that, I think, kind of was where it was losing me a little bit. But it wasn't enough of a loss for me to be like, okay, this movie's a wash. It was more like, okay, I'm sure by part two, I'll probably have a better understanding of how this kind of came to be, because it just feels like it's been weighing on Ethan for so long. But in the past 6 films or so, we haven't really ever heard about this. And it feels like a pretty big moment to kind of overlook. But the wonderful cast is great. Obviously, we have Rebecca Ferguson, who is back as Ilsa Faust, and she's so great. And like you mentioned, Daniel, Hayley Atwell is just hitting it. She's so good in this movie. It feels great to see her outside of something from the MCU, because while she's great as Peggy Carter, I think this is my favorite role for her, because she's fun.
She's been relegated to like almost a cameo in the MCU for a lot of times.
Absolutely.
Right?
And in here,
after Captain America.
Yeah, and absolutely. And here, she's given so much depth, and she's so fun to watch. And she pairs really, really well with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is just the most charming, likable person in this film, and you really root for him throughout the whole film. Simon Pegg as Benji. You have Ving Rhames, who's just so good. They're all fantastic. And of course, the villain, Esai Morales as Gabriel, he's so devilishly charming and handsome, and also this level of like, I don't trust you, but I want to see where you go with this.
Yeah, it's like a Bond villain, right?
Very much like a Bond villain. That's something that I kept saying throughout this movie.
He's like Ethan, but just the evil version of Ethan, right?
He's evil Ethan, yeah. Like that's one of the things about this film that I also kept mentioning. I'm like, this feels so in line with being a Bond film, like the Bond villain, some of the quirks and like, quirks that happen throughout the film, just some moments that I'm like, this feels very 007 and a little bit less than the Mission Impossible film franchise that we're used to. It's not a bad thing. It's a great marriage between the two, and I'm really excited to see where it kind of goes. But again, action, fantastic. Story, I think it needs a little bit more for me to really fully grasp it. But Anthony, please go ahead.
I just want to talk about the action sequence in Rome. If you've gone on YouTube and you've seen how they made that sequence, when you see it on the big screen, it is one of the most impactful sequences in this movie, and I think even in the franchise, because it really dives into Tom Cruise's maneuverability with a handcuffed Hayley Atwell on one side and still driving and not hitting.
It's like a magic trick.
The historic.
He's like performing.
It's literally like a magic trick, and he's like not hitting the historic buildings around him because, again, they don't want to destroy Italy. But that sequence is so like, it just gets you, like, it almost like pulls you into this movie, because the score disappears and all you hear is gears changing, the handlebar
tires
being touched,
rotating,
tires rotating, soundscape. I think when we talk about best sound design Academy Awards, this is for sure a sure bet that it's going to be nominated, because Absolutely. It is so good. And when you shoot in Italy, you have a lot of noise happening, you have a lot of people happening, you have a lot of hollow buildings happening. So it really just encompasses like an echo, and to capture that also during COVID, it's such. And to see that, every film this year is probably taken place in Italy. They have that 40% tax credit. But I kind of go back.
A lot of movies, right?
We
look at even another film that had a part one that we really didn't know about, Fast X, right? Like,
right, and that's what I was.
A big portion of that film was Italy.
Going to go talk about Fast X and how awful that sequence is compared to this. Even though it's not an awful sequence, it just doesn't compare, because this felt so real, right? Compared to
gorgeous. Yeah. Yes.
And
it's absolutely gorgeous.
I think that's one of the main that sequence really captures Mission Impossible as a
no, it's true. It looks so damn good. And you talk about the sound being completely removed from the sequences, works so well. And in the moments where there is sound and there is that composition by the lovely Lorne Balfe, it is amazing. Like I don't know how he does it. It really is fantastic.
I think this is the best mission score ever. I literally left that theater and I was like, this is
when
hands
is it out,
down
Daniel?
for me.
When's it out?
It's out July 14th when the movie releases.
2 days after,
July.
eh?
Out on the 14th. Yeah. So like, or you know what? Maybe I think most likely it'll be on the Friday because it's this movie's getting a weird
Music
Wednesday
release.
release and early. But yeah,
Music
I think
comes
it'll be
out
out on the
Fridays,
Friday.
yes.
But this is I think my favorite mission score. It is pounding. There are moments in this theater where I felt like we were in D-box because the sound was just pumping.
Well, I was
so
moving
loud,
your seat. That's why.
Oh, okay, that was you. That makes sense. But this, we did see it in IMAX. I do want to mention we did see it in IMAX, so it looked great. There are no aspect ratio changes. This movie was not shot in IMAX, which is a little disappointing because those sequences in Fallout really, blew our
even Ghost Protocol
minds.
Like,
it was just
bird
massive.
I would still say like the cinematography for this movie challenges Fallout, even though Fallout had sequences 100%, in IMAX. This movie, the camera movement is so. There's a reason for it. Like there's a scene in the trailer where they're in the desert and Ethan's all head-scarfed and they have these people infiltrating a building and Ilsa has the patch over her eye. It kind of felt like Metal Gear Solid. But there was a sequence where the camera pulls in while people are coming through
it,
and then the last person who enters comes through right in the middle and the camera pulls out. And I think camera movement, when it has a rhyme and reason for that, just works so well. And there is the sequences in Rome where we were talking about how they were driving with Hayley at the wheel, and they have it's just this side panel shot, this kind of like a long wide angle lens just on her and the side of the car with the door kind of like gone. It just felt so good. Like I'm like, oh, this makes it so much bigger. And I'm like, imagine if they shot this with IMAX cameras, how much better these sequences would have been.
Yeah. The cinematography is beautiful. And I think that really lends itself to us talking about how visually different this movie feels than I think what we've gotten before. And that's why I'm really thinking, I'm like, is this like the start of like that new look or that new trilogy? Will part 2, I'm assuming, have a very similar look because it is labeled the same name and it's part 2 of this film. I don't think we're going to see a drastic departure visually, but there is there's a new visual language I think that we're introduced in this film. And I think, Anthony, you mentioned a sequence that was beautiful. That sequence with in the desert. Shahbaz, you also forgot at the top of the show when we were talking about returning cast, not only is Henry returning as Kittridge, we have the Sandstorm returning from Ghost Protocol in Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Actually, first of all, how dare you? That's a different sandstorm. Not all sandstorms are the same, okay?
Listen, well, they definitely are related a little bit.
They're cousins. They're cousins.
They're cousins. Okay. Well, I'm glad the family is working because they
have a contract.
Terrifying.
They have a contract to be in all the Mission Impossible movies, man. Come on.
It's a family of storms.
Yeah.
It's a family of storms.
It's the Storm family. Is there a problem?
Can we talk about Henry Czerny just because it's been like 27 years. I know we mentioned
Is it Czerny or is it Czerny? I just want to
pronouncing it.
I thought it was Czerny.
Czerny?
What? No, I don't think it's that.
Henry.
I feel like it's Czerny.
Czerny?
Like I feel like the C and the Z.
Like you're churning butter.
Yeah, like I feel like you pronounce it like a CH. Again, those watching or listening, please correct us. It could be Czerny, it could be Czerny, or Henry. If Henry happens to be on the show one day, let us know. Well, that will be one of our questions we'll ask you. Man, how do you say your last name?
All right, time's up, guys.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, like, jumping back into a role 27 years later and not having a hiccup. We've seen it.
Didn't skip a beat.
We've seen Michael Keaton return as Batman. We got Kittridge again coming back. It's just these characters that have been so long kind of forgotten or we haven't seen in a really long time, and these actors who play these characters coming back and jumping right into it like, hey, I can play this character like it was yesterday. It just says a lot about who they are as an actor and how they can just embrace this persona so quickly. It's almost scary. It's like man, are you actually Kittridge in real life? Are you?
I think he is. He's amazing.
Demeanor?
He has such a presence and a demeanor. And you see the shot in the trailer where they both stand up and the smoke is all around them. There's been like this. We've been waiting almost 30 years for them to confront one another again. And I wish we knew more about what Kittridge was up to. Because he's so great in this film, and he's in it a lot more than I was expecting. I think we were expecting him to be a little bit less.
Yeah.
Upon doing a little bit more research, it is pronounced Czerny, like you are churning butter.
Okay.
So that's. Well, I'm glad we had this conversation about it.
So you remember I mentioned it to you yesterday, Daniel, where I was watching Mission Impossible 1, and I didn't realize that the weapons or the arms dealer, I forgot her name.
Max.
I didn't realize that was
Vanessa Kirby's mom in the
Kirby's
films?
mom in this. And I'm
Yeah, the White Widow.
Oh. Man,
right in that opening sequence of Fallout, she says like, this is dedicated to Max, and like it's what sets that moment.
Yes. I said to Daniel, please don't be mad at me. And he's like, why would you do? And like, I just realized that Max is
I just deleted our YouTube channel. Oh, the heck? Why?
Yeah, but yeah, it's just funny. If you haven't seen, if you are new to Mission Impossible, or maybe you just didn't realize it, that's who she is. I didn't know.
Yeah, but that's cool. And we're seeing that lineage, right? And we know for the next film, we have, I'm blanking on the actor's name, but we have the gentleman who obviously, when Ethan's doing the famous rappelling from the ceiling scene, that character is returning from the CIA, which is just so funny to see that.
Saxon.
There you
the
go.
Guy who
Thank you
barfs
for
a
that.
lot, right? The guy.
Yeah.
William
Donlow.
Yeah. So like, it's cool seeing him come back. We got Henley. It's Henley, right? Alec Baldwin's character.
Henley probably. Yeah.
It's cool, like when we're introduced to him in Rogue Protocol.
Rogue Protocol didn't come
Rogue
out.
Nation. When Rogue Nation came out, he's like, my earliest interactions with the IMF is when they broke into the CIA.
Yes.
He's like, he's referencing one. Like, it's cool when we're seeing those connections, because this really is a connected world, and as segmented as they felt with 1, 2, and 3, I feel 4, 5, 6, 7 really have a lineage and a DNA, and I think just visually and just musically and story-wise, that we are referencing everything that's happened in this world before.
Yes, Hunley was the name. Yes,
Hunley.
Do you guys feel like?
That's it.
Do you guys feel that Ethan? We've seen Ethan married, but I feel like these last few movies, he's trying to get away from being in a relationship, and especially this one, because I feel like Hayley Atwell's there, as well as Rebecca Ferguson, Ilsa's there, and then it feels like, why doesn't he not want to get into relationships anymore? I feel like there's tension, sexual tension between these characters, but it's almost like Tom or Ethan Hunt has become like a biblical figure in the Mission Impossible franchise. Like, he can't have sex anymore. And I'm like, man, you were so suave in Mission 2 that when you met Thandie Newton's character, you were like, damn, like, it just felt hot.
I'm going to drift with you on a road.
He got so far from being the suave agent, where it's almost like, I don't know how I feel about him just being abstinent in this.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I also feel like that's just him showing the maturity of the character too, because we could have we have characters like James Bond, where we didn't really see it in No Time to Die because that was handled differently in that way. But I feel like James Bond is like going on a mission where the fate of the world's at hand, but he's like, I'm just going to I'm going to have a real quickie, but I'll be right back.
Right.
Where I feel like Ethan is just so obsessed with the mission, and I think that's his character growing, but it's also how his character mentally is he is so obsessed with his mission now. He will do whatever it takes.
He's still
but
banging.
Not to take away that he has, he has great tension with all the good characters.
You tell me he's not banging?
Well, if you see him in the airport, he had there's that sequence where he meets Hayley for the first time. You're just like, there it is. But then when you learn
doing the sleight of hand with the key, and you're like,
I want
here it is.
Just just be free, Ethan. Like, don't worry about, like, the mission is always going to be the mission.
There just happens to be a bomb though in the airport. Like, I mean, it's kind of, it's really
I'm not
bad
saying
timing.
do it right then and there. I'm just saying.
But like, then when? I mean, there's AI attacking.
When this guy's driving down a mountain,
Dude,
and Anthony wants him to be having a ride as well. Like, no, Anthony, no.
No, I'm just saying, like,
no, we're joking. I totally get it. I totally get it.
And it's just like,
I get it.
Don't know. Don't
but I also feel
end
like
of part two, he'll bang.
But and that's the thing, right? I feel like it's almost sad, right? Where it feels like this guy is so, like, just so obsessed with the job that he does that he can't allow himself to have a happy life. You know, they even wrote out Julia, and I'm so glad that she got a proper, you know, happy ending and in Fallout, because, you know, they had to bring her back. They had to reintroduce her, Michelle Monaghan's character, to, you know, who she is, that he'll always have love for her. But he realizes that he is not the type of person that, you know, you could be in a relationship or not. And at the end of Fallout, you really feel like, are him and Ilsa, or Ethan and Ilsa, now moving forward together? And you kind of get your answer in this film as well too. But yeah, Ethan's very much this character who is just broken on the inside, but also just so obsessed with what he's doing. I just, poor guy doesn't have time. I just feel like he does.
He's a little busy.
He's just. I hope he gets to, you know, to get what he needs to one day.
Get off,
because like he does a lot for the world. So hopefully he'll get his soon.
The world can repay him, right? Like,
yeah, exactly that. Exactly.
The world needs to give him a lap dance. Exactly.
Yeah,
I agree.
That's a shirt for sure. That is a shirt for sure.
Yeah. Before we kind of get to our final recommendations, I do want to ask you guys, what are your Mission Impossible rankings? And Daniel, I'll start with you.
Oh man, this is tough, because this is like asking me, like, what family members do I love most? And
you already told me
right now.
That, so
it's true.
I won't expose it.
But I honestly love every single film in this franchise. I don't love 2. I'll be straightforward and be like, listen, there's a lot of amazing moments in 2, but as a whole, it's not a movie that I will revisit as much as I do the latter half of this trilogy. But as it stands right now for me, and this is including my ranking of Dead Reckoning Part 1 on one watch, okay? As it is right now, starting from the bottom, I'm going to go from the bottom, is Mission Impossible 2. I think that's a safe bet where to place it. That's at the bottom for me. From there, which is a huge step up, and a film that I still love, but I feel like I enjoy the other films more, is the first Mission Impossible, directed by Brian De Palma, which, phenomenal film. It's just not one I'll revisit as much as the next ones that are on my list. From there is Mission Impossible 3. So that's J.J. Abrams. That one has some great moments in it, some really cool set pieces, but it also is very much a 2006 movie. And I think you guys know what I mean when I say that. Like, it's very bright and overexposed, and there's some great action set pieces.
It's J.J. Abrams. That's what you mean. Like, it's
that's what you want. It's his first directed. It's his first feature film. Philip Seymour Hoffman is probably one of the best villains and one of his best performances.
I would say that opening is one of the best, just acting wise.
Yeah,
because it was so holy shit. What's happening? You're
in it right away, and I love that movie that it does that. From there, as of right now, I'm going to put Dead Reckoning next, Part 1. And my top 3 films as of right now, number 3 being Rogue Nation, number 2 being Ghost Protocol, number 1 being Fallout. Right now, Dead Reckoning is right in the middle for me, but I'm really excited to watch it again. And again, this is not me saying it is a bad movie, because it's not. You've heard us talk about how much we love it. But right now, it's not better than the last 3. It's right there in the middle, but I'm very excited to see where it goes after many rewatches, because I'm watching it again this week with you guys and next week, and then when Part 2 comes out, to see the full story. So right now, Fallout remains number 1 for me.
Anthony, what about yourself?
It's very similar to Daniel's. Mission Impossible 2 being, the last one of the list, just because its story is not engaging, even though the action sequences are really great. This is probably the most John Woo, Ethan Hunt fight sequences that you'll ever get. But yeah, 2 is there. I'm gonna put 2, 1.
Okay, same so far.
4.
Oh.
And the reason why
Protocol.
the reason why is because without 3, we don't get the evolution of Mission Impossible. We don't get, because
You're right.
without 3, that changed the game for the whole franchise. And from that point, it just got higher and higher. So I'm going to give 3 after Ghost Protocol. So 4, 3, Fallout, Rogue Nation, then Fallout. Quite bad.
Man, I'm confused already.
Not Rogue Nation. I'm going to put Dead Reckoning, Rogue Nation, Fallout. Is that, did I get all of them? Like, there's so many friggin' movies in this franchise.
There's so many, yeah. Sure. No, but we should put like a list on the screen when we'll start filling it in as we go.
For me, 2, it's surprising how much I do not like 2. There's not much for me to go back to it, and I thought I liked it, and then every time I kept watching it, I kept turning it off midway, and it's a bummer. So 2 for me, right there at the bottom. And then right after that, I would say is 3 for me. I love 3. I think towards the second half of 3, it does kind of start to lose me a little bit, but I still really like it. I think there's some great moments there. Right after that would probably be, oh my God, this is getting tough. Probably put 1. I love 1. It's one of my favorite movies. I used to watch it all the time on VHS. It's something about it that it just stuck out to me. It was such a different movie at that time. Then right after that, I would probably put Rogue Nation, Dead Reckoning, Ghost Protocol, and then Fallout.
Interesting.
Did I get them all?
Interesting.
You did get them all. We all have Fallout at number 1, which I totally
Fallout.
Get why.
Yeah. Is number 1.
And I honestly think for myself, as time goes on and as I see this film again, I think it's only going to get higher on my list.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait. We don't talk about other podcasts too often on the show, but I cannot wait for the Empire Film Podcast, because they spoke with Christopher McQuarrie, I think, for like 24 hours straight probably about this movie. So I'm just excited to dive into it and get all the little nuances of what's going on in this one.
And the way it works with like even the ranking that I'm thinking about it, like it's so organic. Fallout for me, though, always I think will be number 1. Like that movie is just chef's kiss. It is so hard to beat. But the rest, except for 2 will always be at the bottom for me. So Fallout always number 1, 2 always at the bottom. The rest can just interchange because I love them all so much. They're all such fantastic films. Sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
I just want to correct myself because I said that Tom Cruise or Ethan Hunt had a parachute scene in 4. It was actually 3 in
because I was going to say, you said it happened in 5 in Rogue Nation, and I was like, I don't remember that. I think you
names,
even
man,
see my face. I was like,
look, dude, I don't even remember. I can't remember. I can't even put these movies in the right order.
I already forgot your ranking, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too, man. Dude, I'm gonna play these numbers at the lotto. Hopefully I win.
All right, well, now it is time for the truth to come out. It is time for part 1 of our Dead Reckoning. Daniel, please tell the audience what your final recommendation for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is.
Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. It's movies like this why we go to the cinema. This is why we go to the movies, are for movies like this. Movies that surprise us, that shock us, that make us sit at the edge of our seats, to challenge us, to give us amazing performances. I truly loved it, and I cannot wait to watch it again. I think for myself right now, though, to play it safe, and I'm playing it weirdly safe right now, this is the easiest watch it that you will get from me. It is amazing. I love it. This is going to be my top 10 films of the year, and you're probably like, Daniel, why isn't it a real gem? I'll be honest with you. I need to watch it again. I need to unpack this movie more. I need to sit with this movie more, because the more I think about it, the more we've spoken about it today over almost the last hour, the more I've loved it, and I can't wait to watch it again. It's a watch it for me right now. It is my highest recommendation. Go to the movies. Go watch it. You're going to love it. And if you don't, you know where to find us. You know where to comment. You know where to leave your reviews of it so we could see, did we get it right? Did we get it wrong? But this is why we go to the movies. I love it. Go watch it.
Thank you for that. Anthony, what about yourself?
I was watching a clip of Harrison Ford talk about why you should go watch Indiana Jones. And I know this is such a reach or a whole roll around, but like he was talking about like sitting down in a dark theater with strangers and go watch my movie. don't go watch Indiana Jones, but definitely go watch Mission Impossible, because this is a movie that you need to go watch in the theaters and enjoy it. It is a sacrifice where you have to deal with the public for sure, because you don't know, who's pulling out what phone or who's talking in the background, but is definitely
just confirming you are recommending this movie,
am
right?
recommending,
You're recommending going to watch it. Okay, just making sure. I'm kidding.
If you're worried about like, oh, I don't want to deal with that, this is the movie you go and deal with. You deal with that because it's so good, and it is a story that, again, I'm very conflicted with how I feel in terms of the ranking and what's better and what. But other than that, that has nothing to do with the overall movie, because I think the movie is still fantastic. I definitely recommend you go watch it, enjoy it, and watch it again. I think it's definitely a movie that you're going to have to rewatch multiple times just to understand the story, because it is very thick,
dense.
I think the general consensus is the action sequences are always going to be phenomenal, but I think the story is where it kind of not falls apart, but just I kind of teeter around, because it
leaves something to be desired. The story,
yeah. And I think a lot of that really is because it very much is a part one, right? It very much is like, okay, let's wait till next year to get
part one. Like I feel like people, when they come out of this, they're going to be like, okay, that solves that. Let's go to the next one. And I don't think Dead Reckoning Part 2 was needed. I think they could just did another name for it.
It's possible. But I feel like the main thing in this film isn't resolved, and I feel like that's why they're like, maybe let's stretch these out over 2 movies
without getting into spoilers, right? I don't want to get too far with it, but no, I appreciate all that you guys are saying, and I think I'm kind of right there with you guys. This is the fastest 3 hours you'll spend in a theater. It'll go right by. The audience that we watched it with was cheering and clapping and just absolutely losing their minds. So you can tell it is a definite crowd pleaser. It's a watch it from me. I know I want to give it that real gem as well, Daniel, kind of like what you're saying, but I feel like this needs another rewatch from me to really grasp what the movie is, because the story wasn't a slam dunk for me as much as, Fallout was, but the action sequences, as much as we kept talking about this movie, just kept getting me excited over and over again. And I just kept thinking, oh my God, I'm forgetting about this, I'm forgetting about that, and I can't wait to watch it again.
There's a lot that happens. There's a lot that happens in this movie, and I think that's where I'm excited to watch it, because I'm like, man, I just want to remember all of what it's happened, because when you're so kind of like, and it's not that it's overwhelming or like
it is overwhelming, though, in a good way.
It is. No, it is. It's overwhelming in the sense where like so much is happening, so many incredible moments are blowing your mind. You're like, oh my God. But I do want to say, and I know we haven't spoken too much about him, Christopher McQuarrie is one of the best directors I think working today. And when you see what he's been able to accomplish with Tom Cruise, I just want Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie to keep making movies together forever, because they are
never
amazing
die
together. Yeah, like they just keep making movies together.
They are the Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Like they are George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. Like every generation has these two pairings that just work together, and we see it a lot now with all these, two people collaborating to make one thing. And I think that's just secret ingredient to making a really good film, is having two creators that are on the same page that make something great.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much for joining us for our review of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to our friends over at Paramount Pictures for inviting us to come watch this movie, and possibly for some interviews that'll be coming down the road. So stay right here for all that information. Of course, down below are our show notes, where you can find us at The Movie Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and whatever other social medias will be coming out in the upcoming days. Who knows? Join our Discord as well, because that will never change. No nuclear satellite codes are in there, but the conversation about these movies and everything else that's happening in the world is happening right in there. So go ahead and give that a join as well. Of course, that was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.